Good evening, everyone. Glad everyone could be out with us. You'll notice we're not in the normal auditorium. We're in the back. The reason is we had a ceiling fan that, after 70 odd years of being up, decided it wanted to come down. So that's why we're back here. But on to our announcements on our prayer list. We still have several people to be remembering in our prayers. Mary Martin, Jim's sister, Janelle Davis, Stephen Marston having some vertigo. Roger Bentley, he's with us this evening, doing some better. Goes in for his next tune-up on Friday. Kathy Wooten's back with us, feeling some better. Kim Inslee, John Carter, Charlie Vandegrift, he's back with us. He had his teeth work done, but he's feeling some better, back with us today. I believe that's it for our prayer list. Did I miss anything?
Tracy Angel has got her foot in a cast all after the meeting.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
Yesterday.
Yeah, Tracy Angel has her foot in a cast, so keep the angels in your prayers. Anything else? If not, on to our announcements. As I mentioned, we have a ceiling fan down, so I think several of us are going to get together this Saturday and try to get that repaired. Anyone that feels like lending a hand this Saturday at 10 a.m., meet at the building, and we'll work on getting the fans resecured. Also, Silver Saints, Mary Scarlett put together a new Silver Saints newsletter. I believe they're on the table by the door, so grab one of those, all Silver Saints. So we're continuing our spring series. This week we have Kyle Gilpin with us. Next week we'll continue with Michael Green. So be inviting for our spring series. It's been a great bunch of lessons. So it's great to invite friends, family, neighbors to. This coming Sunday after services, we'll have our fellowship meal. Also, don't forget the Tennessee Children's Homes bags. If you'd like to donate a bag of food to the Tennessee Children's Home, the bags are labeled with what they need the most on them. Bring them in. We're collecting them over there by the wall. Also, volunteers needed for the Strawberry Festival open house. We have a sign-up sheet. I don't know where it's at, but we'll find it, make sure it's around. So if you're interested in helping with that, there's still some openings. I believe that's all the announcements. Matthew will be taking care of our song service. Sonny Rector has our opening prayer, and Kyle will be doing our devotional. Thanks. Yes.
Drivers.
Oh, yes. If you're interested in helping drive the church van, please see John Scarlett, still needing additional drivers to serve as backups and help with that. Anything else? All right.
All right. Well, glad that you're all here. It's a little bit different. It's kind of like camping, you know. We're in the same place, but when you go camping in the backyard, everything feels a little bit different. So, glad that you're here. Let's sing a servant song. Let's stand as we sing. Lord, make me a servant. Lord, make me like you. For you are a servant. Make me one too. Lord, make me a servant. Do what you must do to make me a servant. Make me like you. Lord, make me a servant. Lord, make me like you. For you are a servant. Make me one too. Lord, make me make me like you, for you are a servant. Make me one too. You can be seated. We will glorify. We will glorify the King of Kings. We will glorify the Lamb. We will glorify the Lord of Lords, who is the great I am. Lord Jehovah reigns in majesty. We will bow before his throne. We will worship him in righteousness. We will worship him alone. He is Lord of heaven, Lord of earth. He is Lord of all who live. He is Lord above the universe. All praise to him we give. Hallelujah to the King of Kings. Hallelujah to the Lamb. Hallelujah to the Lord of Lords, who is the great I am.
Let's pray together. Our Father who art in heaven, we're so thankful for this beautiful day, been blessed with, enjoyed. For this time we have to come out this evening, hear a lesson from your word. We pray, Father, remove the cares of the world from our mind. We'll listen to our speaker, those things he says, to help us live a better Christian life, to be a better example as we go through the world every day. We're thankful, Lord, for Jesus who came to this earth, suffered and died for us, that through him one day we could have a home in heaven. We're so thankful for the country we live in, the freedoms we have, and all the blessings. We do pray, Father, for those who mentioned tonight, our church family, and our brothers and sisters throughout this world, that you will be with them and the doctors, and help them recover back to normal health. Thank you for Jesus. Thank you for our blessings. And Lord, I pray that you will be with us. What I'm fixing to say is, it's a lot of time I complain when they ask us to stand, but it made me suffer from the heart when I seen Mary Scarlett getting up like she did and standing for that song. Lord, we just pray for your help. We'll always try to do what's right and be stronger in serving you. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Oh, sorry. Kyle's turn. Yeah. Just don't hit anything.
His advice is don't touch anything. That's the, I won't do that. Thank you for the invitation. I'll have more to say about that here in just a few minutes, but I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm from the great state of Virginia, and growing up, my favorite sport above all, everything else was baseball. Enjoyed playing baseball, and since I was old enough to pick up a ball, I enjoyed throwing it and played all through high school and really enjoyed playing baseball. One of the things I enjoyed about it, I suppose, is the history of the game. You know, it seems like all the other sports, football and other kinds of sports, basketball, seems to change a great deal, whether they change rules or they change the way the game is played. But baseball, it seemed to be the same since it was invented way back in the 19th century. And it seems like no matter what you can imagine someone doing with a baseball, it's probably already been done. There have been 16 times, for example, that someone has hit 4 home runs in a Major League Baseball game. People have hit for the cycle, and they've thrown complete shutouts without allowing any hits or any base runners whatsoever. All kinds of things have been done just about, and it's very rare that you hear of something that you think, that's never been done before. But on August the 4th, 1982, a man by the name of Joel Youngblood, who most people probably don't recognize that name. He was not a Hall of Famer, not someone who hit for cycles or threw complete games without allowing anyone to get on base. But on August the 4th, that day, he was a member of the New York Mets, and he was playing the Chicago Cubs, his team was, and he comes up at his turn to bat, and he hits a single into the outfield, makes it onto base. Later on in the game, he gets up to the on-deck circle. He's about to hit again. And he's called back into the dugout, and the coach tells him that while the game is being played, you've been traded to the Montreal Expos. So you need to get your things, and you need to go to the airport because your new team is playing a game tonight. And so he gets his things, says goodbye to his former teammates, goes to the airport, flies to Philadelphia, where his new team, the Montreal Expos, that very night are playing the Philadelphia Phillies. He gets to the stadium there, and he goes into the stadium, goes into the dugout where he's just buttoning up his new uniform, says hello to his new teams, and the coach looks at him and says, guess what? We need a pinch hitter. You're up. The game's already started, and so he goes up to the plate, and in his only plate appearance that night, he hits a single. Joel Youngblood on August the 4th, 1982, becomes the first and the only player ever to get 2 hits, one for 2 different teams in the same day. Because of the way that contracts are structured and the way that they make scheduling today, it's probably never going to happen again. Now, as we said, Youngblood's not going to be in the Hall of Fame except for maybe that one event there. But he can claim to have done something that no one ever has done. Not Babe Ruth, not Lou Gehrig, not Ty Cobb, not my favorite player, Ken Griffey Jr. Nobody has done what he did on that one occasion. And that's impressive. That's incredible. But you know, there is one other thing that is far more impressive and, as far as we're concerned, impossible for us to do. And that is living a perfect life. There is one person who has been able to do that, and it's impossible for the rest of us. Thankfully, that's not what we need to do in order to be saved, in order to have that home in heaven. Jesus came to this earth and he lived that perfect life, something that you and I cannot do because of how weak we are physically, mentally, and spiritually. But he lived that life for us so that we did not have to, and so we do not have to die the death that we deserve. And he made that way for us to obey the gospel so that you and I can live with him forever in eternity. On August 4th, 1982, Joel Youngblood put his name in the record book for Major League Baseball, the only player to have a hit for 2 different teams on the same day. But there is a far more important book than you and I need to find our names in. Revelation 22 tells us about the dead, small and great, that John saw. And he says, I saw them all gathered there, and the books were open, and the dead were judged out of the things that were written in the books. Whatever those things were written in the Lamb's book of life. There's that book. Is your name there tonight? You know, it can be, and I hope that it is. If you've obeyed the gospel and you're striving every day to live a faithful life, your name is there. But you know, it's also possible to have that name blotted out. It's not possible for someone to take our salvation away, but we can wander off. We can drift away. We can let things slip and have our names blotted out tonight. You can make it sure my name is there, and I'm going to keep it there by admitting wrong or confessing sin or asking for prayers if that's what you need tonight. Youngblood's name is right there in that record book, and good for him. But I hope your name is in the Lamb's book of life, because that's far more important than however many hits you can get in a single day. Do you need to obey the gospel tonight, or do you need to come back home perhaps and ask for forgiveness? Whatever it might be that you need tonight, we ask that you come right now. Let's stand together and sing.
And can it be that I should gain an interest in my Savior's blood? Died he scorned his perfect love. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my God, would die for me? Amazing love, how can it be that you, my God, would die for me? You left your Father's throne above, so free and infinite your grace, emptied yourself of all but love, and bled for Adam's helpless race. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my God, would die for me? Amazing love, how can it be that you, my God, would die for me? Boldly I come before your throne to claim your mercy immense and free. No greater love will ever be known, for oh my God, it found out me. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my God, would die for me? Amazing love, how can it be that you, my God, would die for me? You can be seated. This time we'll dismiss our teachers to their classes. Wrong way, bud. That way. And kids to their classes. Well, we are glad that you're here tonight, and I know things are a little bit different, and especially for those of you guys that are on the live stream, we're glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're being patient with us as we've tried to figure things out. I will say, I have a lot more respect for what Eric does. They're regular people tonight, and so everybody say hi to Eric and Misty. I don't know if you've ever met them before, but they have a hard job. Tonight we have Kyle Gilpin. He's the pulpit minister over at the East Side Church of Christ over in Cleveland, Tennessee. He's, as he said earlier, was from Roanoke. And so I was talking with my brother-in-law just previously before church. My brother-in-law is from Roanoke, and we made the connection that they grew up together for a little while. And so it's a small world in the church. And so Kyle's been at East Side twice now. Once as a youth minister, and now he's returned as a pulpit minister. And he's got 2 boys, 2 girls. He's a Memphis School graduate, and we're excited as Kyle comes to speak to us about a church that contains both truth and love. So, Kyle.
45 minutes or so. Okay, yeah. How about that? There. 67, okay. Yes, sir. Good folks come from Virginia. That's what I've heard anyway. We're going to begin in Ephesians chapter 4 tonight. You take your Bibles and open to Ephesians chapter 4. So glad for this invitation, and whether we have to be in the auditorium or a room such as this or out under a tree, I don't care. I'm just glad to be here. I'll tell you what this reminded me of when I walked in. It reminded me, I can't believe it's been about 3 or 4 years since we've had to rearrange everything because of COVID, but I know a couple of times we had to have worship service in the fellowship hall, everybody spread out a little bit. I was in West Alabama during that time period, so it kind of reminded me of that, and I was kind of wondering what I had walked into when they were all spread out like that. But I am grateful that no one was injured. I'm assuming no one was injured when the fan light fell down. Glad that didn't happen during our service, but I'm thankful for this opportunity tonight. I see those on the live stream are getting an up close and personal view of me. That may not be what they want to be doing on a Wednesday night, but I got me, nose and no hair and all right here in front of them. So anyway, I'm so glad to be here. So glad to see you. It's good to see the rectors and Bowlings. Good to meet Matthew and all of you who are here tonight. I'm thankful for this invitation and have looked forward to it. I look back over on Facebook. You've got your schedule there and some of the great speakers that you've had. Eric Garner, a good friend of mine, and I know that he has done a great job. And some of these others that you've had here. The topics, such a great list of topics here for such a time as this. We can gain some encouragement knowing that we are here, no matter when we are on history's timeline. We can know that we are here for such a time as this. And while we might not be able to do everything, there are some things that you and I can do to be lights in this world, encouragement to people here, salt, light, all of those things that we are to be. There in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15, Paul said, speaking the truth in love. I was given the quite large topic that you and I are here tonight. We are here for such a time as this, knowing that we are a church that contains truth and love. We could spend several hours on each one of those two there, truth and love. But I wanted us to begin there in Ephesians 4 to notice that Paul told us that we were to be speaking the truth, and we are to be doing it with love, because contrary to what a lot of people today want to believe, regardless of the characteristics or the tactics that a number of quote-unquote religious people feel the need to do, you and I are not to be using the scriptures. We're not to be using the word of God to bash people over the heads with. We are not to be attacking people and making them feel less than they should. You and I are supposed to be speaking the truth. We do not back down from it. We do not sugarcoat it. We do not beat around the bush. We speak the truth. But the way that we love other people, regardless of what people believe or say or do to us, we still love them. And it's those two things that go hand in hand that make the church unique in this world. If you and I are acting like the rest of the religious world, if you and I are acting like everybody else, we're no different. We are that salt that Jesus said that has lost its savor. In John chapter 13, verse 35, Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples. He's about to give them a way, a characteristic, a distinction that lets everybody know that they are Christians. What is that distinction? Well, it's a bumper sticker that you have on your car. It's a t-shirt that you wear that says, I'm a Christian. It's a bracelet. I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s. I turned the big 40 this year, so that means I'm old now. And so back in those times, we had those bracelets, WWJD. That was really big back in the 90s. That's how you show that you're a Christian, right? You wear those things. Nothing wrong with any of those things. But Jesus said, John 13:35, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples if you love one another. We're going to spend the rest of our time talking about that word love tonight. But keep in mind that we are to be members of the church that contains truth and love. And when the world looks at what we're doing, that's supposed to be what they see. What is it that a church that contains truth and love, what does that church look like? That's our task tonight. We'll have 8 points, and we are going to go up to the hour. I can assure you I'm not going to go longer than that. I'll just stop talking when we get to that hour there. But I'm glad to be here, and I hope that your time is worthwhile in being here tonight. A church that contains truth and love is one, first of all, that has acceptation. That is, a church that has acceptation is one that welcomes. I've been welcomed since I came in here. Tommy Bowling's first one to come up and speak to me after I was speaking to Matthew there. But the whole group here, very welcoming, has been spoken to, and I doubt that that's something that only I felt whenever I came here. Visitors hopefully feel that. But what about when we're in the world? Do we speak to people? Do we let them know that we're welcoming, not just in this building or wherever we might be, but all places that we are? You know, Jesus welcomed all kinds of people. He was ridiculed, he was chided for the people that he ate with, because in the minds of the Pharisees and others, that showed that he accepted them and they wouldn't be caught dead eating with those drunkards and sinners and other people. While Jesus ate with people and while he accepted them, he certainly did not expect them to stay the way that they are. I'm sure you sing the song, Just As I Am. Jesus wants us to come to him just as we are, but he doesn't want us to stay that way. He wants us to change. But before we can change, we need to know that he welcomes us just the way that we are. The idea that I'm going to change first and then I'll start going to church, you know, you've heard that before. That's not the way that it is. The church that contains truth and love is one that is full of acceptation. Romans 15 and verse 7, wherefore, Paul said, receive one another as Christ has received us. Notice that. Notice how there's a connection there. Receive each other as Jesus receives you. That means overlooking faults. That means overlooking mistakes and characteristics that we just don't get along. That means overlooking a lot of things. We'll talk more about that when we get to that. 1 Peter 4, verses 9 and 10. Peter said, use hospitality one to another. I'm not sure your story behind your conversion, those of you who are Christians here. And if you were like me and you grew up in the church, there wasn't really a time when someone invited you to worship or something like that. Mom and dad took you. That's what we did. But maybe you're here tonight and there was a time in your past when you weren't a member of the church. You didn't know about the church. How is it that you came to know Jesus? Perhaps it was that you were walking down the street and you saw a sign that said Spring Series and someone's name, and you said, I'm going to go in there and hear that, and you learn the gospel. Maybe that happens. Probably not much. The vast majority of people who obey the gospel, who are converted later in life as adults, you know how they come to know Jesus? Because they were invited by a friend. Someone welcomed them. Hospitality, so important. Peter makes mention of that. Use hospitality one to another without grumbling. 1 Peter 3, verse 8, be all of you of one mind, having compassion one for another. Love as brethren. Be pitiful, be courteous. As Matthew said, I have 4 children. Our oldest is 13. Our youngest turns 7 tomorrow. We have a loud house. We have a dog and 2 cats and a ferret and a fish. It's loud. But I'll tell you the phrase I say more than any other phrase, other than stop that. The phrase I use more than anything else is be kind. Be kind. How you're saying whatever it is that you're saying, kindness will go so far. I hope they're listening. I hope one day they say, boy, our dad used to say all the time, be kind. We got sick of it. Good. I want them to be kind. Be kind one to another. Kindness can go a long way because there's people in this world, most people, look to be angry first, speak first, listen second. A church that is full of truth and love is one of acceptation. Let's look number 2. A church that is full of truth and love is one that has appreciation. It is a church that values everyone. Many in the world today would put value on the amount of effort that someone would put into a task, or someone's ability, or the amount of money that someone has, or someone's skin color, or socioeconomic level, or all kinds of things. Lots of people like to put people in boxes. The Christian, the church, is full of people who say, I value you. I value you because of who you are. I appreciate you. And I'm thankful for what you do. Romans 12, verse 10, be kindly affectioned one to another, with brotherly kindness, in love, honoring and preferring one another. Matthew mentioned that I attended the school of preaching there in Memphis, and we preacher students are a different breed, those of us who have been to any preaching school. But one of the things we would use was this verse, and we would always use it when we were in line at a fellowship meal. Preferring one another, that means I get to go first, right? Preferring one another. We'd always do that whenever you'd want to go first. No, preferring one another means I'm going to let you go first. I'm going to let you be at the head of the table, not because you deserve it necessarily. Who cares whether you deserve it? I'm going to be someone who appreciates you for you, and because you are who you are, faults and all, because guess what? I got a bunch myself. I prefer you. Kindly affection one for another. 1 Thessalonians 5, 12 through 13. We beg you, Paul said, we beseech you, esteem others very highly in love for their work's sake. Esteem each other highly. Notice he doesn't give a list there and say, if they fit this bill, then you esteem them highly. If they've been elected to office, then you esteem them highly. No, you esteem everyone highly. You treat everyone with respect. Be, as I say, kind. A church that is full of truth and love, the world is going to notice that they value not only each other, but those in the world as well. Philippians 2, 3, and 4, let nothing be done, Paul said, through strife or in vain glory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others higher than themselves. What kind of world would we be? What kind of society would be? What kind of town would this be if everyone that you saw esteemed others more highly than himself? What a great world we would have. We wouldn't have nearly as many problems if each person thought more highly of others and less highly of themselves. A church that is full of truth and love is one that has appreciation one for another, shows value. Number 3. A church that is full of truth and love is one that has consideration. Some of these will intertwine, and we'll use some of the similar verses for each one of them. But a church that is full of truth and love is one that respects. It has consideration of other people. Again, thinking more highly than they should, than they do themselves. Hebrews 10, verse 24, let us consider one another, the Hebrews writer says, to provoke unto love and good works. There's both of them right there. Provoke one another to love and to working with and for the truth. We don't go out and work in this world because it's an obligation. I'm talking about working in the vineyard, in the kingdom, with the church. We don't do that because we have to. We don't do that because we gotta. We do it, we should do it because we love. When I see you working the way that you can and do, you work because you love other people, that encourages me. I want to do that. I want to do that not because and try to outdo you, but because I see you working, makes me want to do it as well. Provoke one another to love and good works. Why do we do that? Beginning of verse 24 says, consider one another. Romans 12, verse 15, rejoice with those that rejoice and weep with those that weep. Why do we have announcements? Why do you have someone that stands up here before it? You know, that's the 6th act of worship, isn't it? The announcements. Why do we do that? I would imagine that you have a bulletin that you have every Sunday. You have and you have the list of those who were sick, those who were in need of prayer. Why do we have those? We have those so that we know both the defeats, the losses that people suffer, and also the victories that people have. Because whether I'm related to you by blood or not, whether I've ever met you or not, when you are victorious, I'm victorious. And when you feel loss and you suffer loss, I feel it as well. Paul, in the book of 1 Corinthians, compares the church to a body. And all these parts are working together. Each member is a single part. And when one part hurts, the others just don't say, oh, well, I'm glad it's not me. No, they all rush to the aid. You ever hit your hand with a hammer? You ever hit that thumb? What do? Well, this hand that hit the thumb, it throws the hammer as far as it can. And then it grabs that thumb, and then you start to scream and you start to jump around, wondering why you could ever be so silly to do that. Each part rushes to the aid of those who are there. Not because they're hurt necessarily, but because the body hurts. That's a church that respects. That's a church that considers. 1 Peter 3, verse 8, be all of the same mind, having compassion, to stand beside, to feel along with others. We read those names on the announcement sheet. We hear the announcements, not to say, boy, I'm glad that's not me, but to say, I'm hurting now. I need to see what I can do to make all of us feel better. Because when you win, I win. When you're better, I'm better. The world sees that. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples if you love one another. That doesn't mean just sending cards to each other, saying you love each other. No, it goes far beyond that, into our actions, and the world sees it. And they see the lack of it whenever that's the case as well. A church that is full of truth and love is one that has consideration. Number 4, that church that has truth and love there inside of it is one that has exhortation. It is one that encourages other people. How many times can you turn on that news channel? You open up that news app, or you get a call from someone that has the latest update on what's going on in the world. I am convinced that we should change the word news. We should just change it to what went wrong today. All the bad things in the world. You know, it's very easy, especially today with our social media and all, we're connected immediately with what's happening in the world. It's very easy to pay attention to those things and to be discouraged. It's very easy to see what's happening in our world, and no matter what side you're on of which way, there's some reason to be discouraged. The Christian, however, knows this world is not our home. This country, this is not my country. I might be a citizen here. I might vote. I might take part in the government in a certain way, but it's not my home. I've got a home somewhere else. And so whatever happens in this world, while I feel for it and I feel bad and want to change it, this is not my eternal destiny. A church that is full of truth and love is one that encourages other people. In a world that is dark, that is discouraging, it is a world, the church is in a world that has light and wants to encourage. Hebrews 3, verse 13, exhort one another daily. How much are you doing that? How much encouraging are you doing on a daily basis? It's good to be encouraged Wednesday night, Sundays. It's good to do that. How much daily encouragement do we try to give one another? Encourage one another, exhort one another daily while it is called today. 1 Thessalonians 5:11, comfort yourselves together and edify, build one another up even as you do. We're all, in a certain way of looking at it, we're all falling apart, whether physically, maybe even spiritually a little bit. The church is supposed to be those not who have it all together, but who are striving through Jesus to keep each other together. There's encouragement there. There's encouragement here, and the world sees it or sees the lack of it. Romans 14, verse 19, let us therefore follow after the things which make for peace and edify one another. Oh, how badly our world needs the word peace. It's always needed that word, but how badly it does today. Christians are those who should be following after things that edify, that build up, that encourage, that bring peace between individuals. A church that is full of truth and full of love is one that has within it exhortation. It's also one, number 5, that has within it toleration. Love is something that bears. And while it's easy to expect others and assume others to bear with me, sometimes it's far more difficult to bear with others. A church that is full of truth and love is one that has toleration. It's one that bears. Ephesians 4 and verse 2, with all lowliness, meekness, and long-suffering, forbearing one another in love. I dare say that we would all think, if we were to admit, I'm not perfect. I don't have it all together. I certainly don't have all the answers, and I need forgiveness. But then when we look at other people, we expect out of others far more than we expect out of ourselves. I'm not perfect, but maybe I treat you like I expect you to be. Paul told the Ephesians, forbear one another, bear under, help each other bear the burdens of life. A church that is full of truth and love is one that has toleration. It bears. You got problems, idiosyncrasies, mistakes. You like a different football team. I mentioned I'm from Virginia. We rooted for the Hokies, and my family is from West Alabama, and we rolled Tide. That's what we said. Can you tolerate someone like that? I don't know. I don't know if you can do that in this part of the country or not. But there are things that are far more important than rooting interest that we have to tolerate people with. No one expect them necessarily to change. Those things don't matter. We're not talking about biblical doctrine. We're not talking about unsoundness or unfaithfulness. We're talking about things that we might not like ourselves. We have to forbear in other people. Galatians 6 and verse 10, bear one another's burdens, Paul said. But notice the last part of verse 2, and so fulfill the law of Christ. You want to be a Christian? Jesus said, love one another. You want to follow the law of Christ? Paul said, follow after and forbear one another and bear each other's burdens. Now, my question is, when we read Galatians 6 and verse 2, how do I know what burdens you have to bear? Because most of the time, if you're like me, you don't really want to necessarily tell people what's going on. It's not something that you really want to discuss. You don't want to be a problem to other people. How is it that you and I are to bear one another's burdens? You see, we should be together more than a few hours a week, more than those 2 hours or 3 on Sunday and the 1 on Wednesday. We should be involved in each other's lives. The first century church was seemingly constantly together. And so when there was a problem somewhere in the body, just about everybody knew it. And not a single person had a smartphone or Facebook. And yet they knew all the problems that were going on with each other. Bear one another's burdens. Someone like me who may not want to tell problems, be a burden to someone, needs to get with it and say, sure, I'll tell you my problems. Maybe you can help me, because you know what? I want to help you too. A church that has within it truth and love is one that has toleration, bears one another's burdens. 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 7, 4 through 8, Paul gives a great description of love, a number of characteristics that love is. Love is, among other things, kind, I would tell my children. But for our word here, verse 7 of 1 Corinthians 13 said, love bears all things. That's the difficult part. I can bear up to a point. No, Paul said love bears all things, endures all things. If there's any kind of difficulty between you and me, it's not going to be because of me, because love bears all things. And a church that has within it truth and love is one that tolerates. We're not talking about tolerating sin. We're not talking about tolerating and conforming to the world, but rather we're talking about each other. We're different in so many ways. Humans are. No two are exactly alike. And so we're going to have differences. We're going to have disagreements. Love bears all things. The world sees that. The world sees that's a place that tolerates differences in people, different beliefs politically and otherwise, different other kinds of things that they might tolerate. The world sees that, and they see when it's not there as well. A church that is based on truth and love has within it toleration. Number 6, the church that has truth and love is one that has ministration. That is a serving attitude, a servant's heart. Jesus came to seek and to save that which was lost. How did he do that? He came by being a servant. He wasn't born in a palace. That's where the wise men went, you'll remember. They went to the palace. The king of the Jews is here, so we're going to the palace. No, he wasn't there. He was laid in a feed trough. He was there with those animals. That's where the Son of Man, that's where the Son of God was laid. And the rest of his life, he spent looking not like a God, not like deity, but just like a man. And he did things that gods wouldn't normally do. That is, he served other people. He did that to seek and to save that which was lost, but he also did it to be an example to each one of us. Galatians 5 and verse 13, Paul said, you have been called unto liberty. Only let not your liberty be liberty of the flesh, but by love serve one another. It kind of goes back to that one of those other points that we talked about, considering one another, preferring one another. I'm going to let you go first. I'm going to let you have the best. I'm going to let you have your place first, and then if there's room, I'll be there too. The church is should be looking to serve, because there are times when I need something and I need served, and there are other times when you need served. The church is full of those members who are full of ministration. They are willing and able to serve where they can. There are some things that you can't do. If I showed up here Saturday, there's not a thing about that light bulb or that fan that I'd be able to help with. I could tell you when it's done. I could tell you that it looks good. That's as far as it can go. But I can pick up a broom. I can sweep. I can pick up things and help move things around that might need. You see, we can work together, and our differences work to make better the whole. A church that is full of truth and love is one that serves and wants to serve others. 1 Peter 4 and verse 10, as every man received the gifts, even so minister, the same one to another as good stewards. Peter here is probably referring to spiritual gifts, miraculous gifts. But in our context today, we might say that you have certain abilities that you do, things that you like to do, that you can use your hobbies, you can use your experiences and others to serve other people. Things that I'd never be able to do. I'd never be able to reach those individuals because I don't have the same experience, ability, or interest that you do. Paul said, with those gifts that you have, love one another and serve one another. John chapter 13, verses 14 and 15, we have here kind of the end of this section here where Jesus is teaching a lesson to his disciples. You'll remember that they were there here at this Last Supper. And as the custom was, there should have been a bowl of water and someone provided to wash the feet of all of those men who had been walking around in the dirt all day. And all the disciples looked around and there wasn't anyone to wash their feet. And we know what they've been doing in the past, been arguing over which one is the greatest. James and John had their mother come to Jesus. I want this one to sit on your left hand, this one to sit on your right in the kingdom. So they were all looking around thinking, no way, I'm not touching those feet. And so Jesus, creator of the universe, one who was about to die for them not long after this very moment, takes a towel, he girds himself, and he starts to wash their feet. And to me, there's utter silence in the room as they're all either ashamed that they didn't do it first or just being dumbfounded as to what they're seeing. But he gets to Peter, and you'll remember that Peter said, Lord, you're not going to wash my feet. And Jesus says that this is not what we're talking about here. If I don't wash you, then you don't have any part with me. And he says, oh, then wash all of me. And Jesus said, you're still not getting it. He says here in verses 14 and 15 that as I have done to you, so you ought to do to each other. Does that mean that we should have been washing feet when we came in here? If you have dirty feet and you need them washed, I'll wash them. But that's not what he was talking about. There was a need. There was something that needed to be done, and Jesus said, I'll do it. A servant's heart says, I'll do it. A servant doesn't look around for someone else to do it. A servant says, I'll do it. May not know how, may not be the best at it, but I'll do it. A church that is full of truth and love is a church that serves and knows how to serve other people. And let me tell you, more than probably any of these others, this is something that people notice. And they notice when it's not there as well. When I was growing up there at Roanoke, Salem is the town right next to Roanoke, and that's where I grew up and was from. And when I turned 16, I got a job at, it's kind of like Chuck E. Cheese, had all these video games, laser tag. It was the place to be, back in the late 90s. And when I started working there, worked in the kitchen, making the pizzas and cleaning up and that sort of thing. You got to do that when you're 16. But as I got older, I got senior in high school, and one day the owner came to me and he handed me some keys. And he said, I'm going to name you. You're going to be the manager now. And I said, ooh, this is it. I'm going to get my big pay bump. I'm going to be able to tell people that they're the ones that need to be cleaning, and they're the ones who need to be making the pizzas and all of this stuff. I got to count the money at night. I was big time. I was the man. He said, but however, he said, I want you to be able to designate people to do certain jobs. I'm thinking, I can do that. I can designate. I know what they need to do. He said, but there's one job that you, the manager, you're the only one that can do this job. And I was thinking, here it is. This is it. This is going to be the best, most important job. He said, you and only you, every night before you close, you have to clean the bathrooms. You can't designate anyone to do it. You can't tell any other person to do it. You do it. And let me tell you, I don't know if you've ever been in a bathroom at Chuck E. Cheese, but they're gross. Humans are great and we're awesome, but we're also gross. I have a feeling that that was done to teach me, the 18-year-old, and all those other managers that he had, that we're not really as important as we think. You see, a Christian knows we're not nearly as important as we think. We can be replaced, but while we're here, we can do all that we can to help others. I'll do that. I'll serve. I'll help. I'll be there. A church full of truth and love is one that has ministration. Number 7. A church that is full of truth and love is one that has absolution. What does this world need more than forgiveness? A church is full of people who have been forgiven and who are willing to forgive. A church that is full of truth and love is one that forgives. Ephesians 4:32, verse we've already read, but there's so many points in this one verse that goes to many of these that we've talked about. Be kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another. Now notice the last part of verse 32, forgiving one another as you have been forgiven. That's tough because Paul says your forgiveness is directly tied to how much you're willing to forgive. We might say, oh, I want all the forgiveness. I remember Jonah when he was in that fish, when he was spat out on the land, he wanted all the forgiveness. But then when God told him to go to Nineveh and to preach to those terrible people, that they were going to be saved from destruction, he didn't want them to have it. He only wanted it for himself. And far too many times we treat the church as a gated community. Only people that look like me or who think like I do, vote like me, we're the only ones. Church is full of people who have been forgiven and are willing to forgive anyone of anything. Colossians 3:13, forbearing one another and forgiving one another. That's part of that forbearance. Not only will I put up with you, but I'll also forgive you of all your faults because I want you to do the same to me. Matthew 18, verses 23 through 35, Jesus was asked by Peter, on that occasion, how many times should I forgive? And 7 times, that was a lot. Jesus said, no, 70 times 7. And then he tells this story. He said, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who went and made account with his servants, and he had one that owed him 10,000 talents. That is more money than that man will ever make in his life. And the man begged him, please, I will repay. Just give me a little more time. And the king, instead of saying, okay, you've got 24 hours, you got a week, you've got a month, it says that the king forgave the debt, forgave it all, paid it off. It's all forgiven. Don't worry about it. He was jubilant, the man was, the servant was. And then, however, he remembered, wait a second, I've got someone that owes me 100 pence, less than a day's wager. And so he goes to that man and he says, you owe me money. Pay me what you owe. And the man, very reminiscent of what the other one had just said, please have mercy on me. I will repay. Give me a little more time. Jesus said the first man grabbed the other by the throat, cast him into prison, where you will not see the light of day until you pay me what you owe. Once the king found out about that, he took the first man, switched places, he cast him into prison. You see, my forgiveness is directly tied to how much I'm willing to forgive others. Do you forgive a little bit? You'll be forgiven a little bit. Am I willing to forgive everything? My debt's paid off as well then. A church full of truth and love is one that has absolution, that is willing to forgive. Just a few more minutes here left of our time. Let's look at one final one, a church that is full of truth and love, one that this community here sees and wants to be a part of, is one that has within it restoration. As I said during our invitation tonight, there are possibilities that you and I can walk away from Jesus. There are times when you and I can let things slip, and while we might be faithful in our attendance, mentally and spiritually, we are far away from Him. When we realize that, there's a need to make a restoration. My name's been blotted out because I've just not cared about Him. I've wandered away. I've done things that I shouldn't do. Now's the time to make restoration. But there's also something to be said for those members of the church that look around and say, you know what? Where's that person? Where's this individual? She's not here anymore. And there's the temptation to throw your hands up and say, oh, well, if they don't want to be here, we don't want them here. But a church that has truth and love is one that wants to rescue and restore those who have left. Galatians 6, verse 11, brethren, he's talking to Christians, if any of you be overtaken in a fault, those of you that are spiritual, notice, restore such a one with meekness and in the bond of peace. Notice he says, if any of you, brethren, wander away, those that are spiritual, restore them. James 5:16, confess your faults one to another and pray one for another that you may be healed. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man does much in its working. A church that is full of truth and love looks around and says, who needs restoring? Who needs restoration? Whether they're here or not, they need restoration. Luke 15, verses 4 through 6, Jesus said, what man has 100 sheep, one goes astray? Will he not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go and find the one? That's supposed to be a rhetorical question. The question is supposed to be an obvious answer. All of us would do that. But do we? Do we do that? You see, a church that is full of truth and full of love has all of these characteristics that is, in one word, love. When we look around, we think about what we can do to spread the word and the gospel in this community. There are lots of ways we can do it by having gospel meetings and vacation Bible schools and spring series. Those are great things to do. But the best way to be a light in this community is to be a church that is full of truth and is full of love. Thank you so much for your invitation tonight, and we hope and pray for all the best and all that you do in God's kingdom from this point forward. Thank you.